Hello and welcome back to our MOOC on EU space governance. In today's video we will delve a bit more into the EU's policy on space and defense. So clearly this video will build on the foundation that we laid in the previous video in which we discussed how the European Union is developing its space policy to meet its common foreign and security, or CFSP, objectives. And now, in this video, we will explore how space is really also integral to the EU's common security and defense policy, or CSDP, specifically. And we'll also examine the 2023 joint communication on an EU space strategy for security and defense, which we've mentioned in the last video. We'll discuss the role of the European Defense Agency, and we'll highlight the increasing cooperation between the European Union and NATO. First, as in the previous video, let's refresh a little bit our knowledge on the European Union's Common Security and Defense Policy, or CSDP. CSDP is a cornerstone of the EU's external action, and it's one of the key components of the CFSP. And it allows the EU really to take a leading role in peacekeeping operations, conflict prevention, and the strengthening of international security. So the CSDP is not only about deploying troops and conducting military operations, although it's that as well, but it also involves a range of civilian missions that address security challenges and which promote stability. As with the CFSP in general, space capabilities are also really vital for the objectives of the CSDP. So satellites provide essential support for secure communication, surveillance and reconnaissance, and precise navigation, all of which really enhance the Union's operational effectiveness and decision-making in both military and civilian security and defense missions. Now let's turn to some specific aspects of the EU's policy on space and defense. And here we'll focus on, as I've noted, the 2023 joint communication on an EU space strategy for security and defense. We'll also focus on the Space Threat Response Architecture, or STRA, that's developed in that communication a bit further. So in 2023, the European Commission, together with the High Representative of the Union for Foreign Affairs and Security Policy, released a joint communication that outlines a comprehensive EU strategy for security and defense. The document highlights several key initiatives and objectives, which can be summarized as follows: enhancing space situational awareness, boosting resilience of space systems, strengthening space-based services, promoting international cooperation, and supporting innovation and research. First, enhancing space situational awareness, or SSA. The strategy contains a number of proposals for kicking into higher gear the development of EU capabilities to monitor space and to detect potential threats such as space debris, but also hostile actions, as well as natural hazards more generally. A second big innovation proposed by the 2023 strategy concerns boosting the resilience of space systems used throughout the European Union. And for this purpose, it proposes a veritable EU space law, as we've already mentioned in this MOOC, the purpose of which is to establish a legal framework that protects space infrastructure from cyber attacks, jammings, and other disruptions as well. So, and of course, we know it's currently delayed, but the law, once it comes into effect, will really aim to ensure secure access to space, and it will safeguard critical space assets as well. Thirdly, the EU space strategy for security and defense also aims to strengthen space-based services. And specifically, it recalls the need really to improve the reliability and the security of satellite communication, navigation, and Earth observation services, all of which are, as we know, critical for security and defense operations. As we also know, we've seen this is connected with the development of the IRIS² program. Fourthly, the 2023 strategy again drives home the point that common security challenges in space can only be properly addressed by reinforcing collaboration with international partners, because only then can the EU really ensure that its actions are aligned with global norms and standards. As we will see, this means, among other things, closer collaboration with NATO. Finally, defense and security in space cannot be realized without the proper support for innovation and research within the European Union. And for this reason, the 2023 strategy also contains a series of recommendations for investing in research and development in order to foster technological advancements and to maintain the Union's competitive edge in space defense capabilities. Now let's circle back to the first focus of the 2023 space strategy, which, as you'll recall, is SSA, or Space Situational Awareness. So since the inception of this component of the EU's space program, space threats have really multiplied, not in the least through the development of ASAT, or anti-satellite technologies, by various countries, including Russia and China. So to keep track of these threats and to better outline the Union's policy options for responding to them, the 2023 strategy implements a Space Threat Response Architecture, or STRA, which is part of a broader shift or update from, let's say, space situational awareness to space domain awareness, or from SSA to SDA. So the STRA is a coordinated approach to identifying, assessing, and to responding to threats in space. Now, this architecture includes a couple of things. First of all, a threat detection and analysis. So this section requires the development of enhanced capabilities for monitoring space, for detecting potential threats, such as hostile actions or natural hazards, and to analyze their potential impact. Second, it comprises dedicated response mechanisms. So the European Union clearly has to be able to develop and implement rapid response protocols to mitigate the effects of threats once they have been identified. And this includes collaboration with international partners as well as private sector stakeholders. And thirdly, the EU's Space Threat Response Architecture also comprises STRA threat exercises. So these concern regular exercises that are designed to test and then further refine the EU's response to space threats. It takes its cues from the French example, and these STRA exercises, they simulate various space-related threat scenarios. These go from cyber attacks on satellites to the collision of space debris. And the aim, of course, is to ensure overall preparedness and resilience once these simulated scenarios become reality. Now, for the remaining part of this video, let's turn our attention to two key actors in the EU's space defense policy, whose role in EU space governance we have not really covered in detail in this MOOC yet. I'm talking about the European Defense Agency, or EDA, and, as mentioned, NATO as well. Now first, European Defense Agency. This defense agency plays a pivotal role, as you can imagine, in the EU's defense capabilities in general, and this includes space in particular. So what it does is the EDA facilitates collaboration amongst member states in order to develop and to procure defense technologies and capabilities. In the context of space specifically, the European Defence Agency focuses on a number of key areas and initiatives. First, research and development. The EDA plays a crucial role in promoting innovation and technological advancements in space-related defense capabilities. One of the ways in which it does is through programs such as the Joint Investment Programme on Space and the Preparatory Action on Defense Research. Next up is coordination and standardization. So ensuring that space defense initiatives are coordinated across member states and that standards are established for interoperability between these capabilities are two key tasks of the European Defence Agency. And a specifically relevant initiative of note here is the European Military Space Surveillance Awareness Network, which integrates SSA capabilities across member states. Third is capacity building. The European Defence Agency supports member states of the EU in building and enhancing their space defense capabilities through joint projects. An early example of this was MOOC, the multinational space-based imaging system for surveillance, reconnaissance, and observation. So this initiative aimed to improve, briefly speaking, the EU's satellite imagery capabilities. And finally, the European Defence Agency is also key in organizing training programs and joint exercises to really improve the skills and the preparedness of military personnel in using space-based technologies and in responding to space-related threats. So as such, the EDA is closely involved in the STRA exercises, which we mentioned earlier. Now, so clearly the EDA efforts are crucial in fostering a collective approach to space defense, to enhance the European Union's strategic autonomy, and to ensure that member states can effectively respond to emerging threats. Additionally, since the Ukraine crisis, there has also been a marked increase in cooperation between the European Union and another player external to the EU, which is NATO. And the basics for this increased cooperation were outlined already in the 2016 joint declaration between these two organizations, and they've been further updated and refined in subsequent progress reports on the cooperation between these two organizations. So the collaboration between the EU and NATO really is considered to be increasingly essential for addressing common security challenges in Europe, and these of course include security challenges in and from space. Now, key areas of cooperation between this increased reliance on, let's say, the European Union and NATO in space, these include, first of all, information sharing. Right? NATO and the EU have pledged to enhance their sharing of intelligence and situational awareness in space in order to really improve the joint detection and response to space threats as we've identified them. Secondly, joint exercises. The EU and NATO conduct joint exercises to test and to improve interoperability and coordination in responding to space-related incidents and threats. And thirdly, policy alignment. Right? Increasingly, the European Union and NATO attempt to align their policies and their strategies to really ensure a cohesive, complementary approach to space security and defense. This includes harmonizing threat assessments and response strategies as reflected in the strengthened resilience and in the strategic compass initiatives. But more than anything, the increased EU-NATO cooperation really underscores the importance of a united front in addressing the multifaceted challenges in space security and defense in Europe. So to conclude, the European Union has really developed over time a dedicated policy on space and defense. The 2023 joint communication on a space strategy for security and defense clearly is the current linchpin of this approach and this policy. This document collects a number of initiatives to integrate space capabilities into the broader security framework, enhancing resilience and strategic autonomy. Within that framework, special rules are reserved for the European Defense Agency as well as NATO. So this concludes our video on the EU policy on space and defense. Once you're ready, come find me for the next and last video in this fourth module dedicated to the Union's space policy, in which we'll discuss space sustainability and the EU's policy in that regard.